Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm delighted to welcome you all to this virtual event in celebration of United Nations Public Service Day and to celebrate public servants worldwide. My name is Elizabeth Nyamayaro, and I'm a special advisor at the United Nations World Food Programme. I'll be your MC and moderator for today's event. We have gathered for you today a highly distinguished panel of guests. But before I hand the floor to our speakers, I want to stress that today's event is really about public servants and those who work to ensure effective public service delivery everywhere. Our focus today is on enhancing innovative partnerships as we work to build back from COVID-19. Everybody around the world has been affected by COVID-19 in some way or another. And while we begin to reopen our societies and economies, we must be reminded that the pandemic is not yet over. Many people continue to be affected, and many still struggle to receive the healthcare they need to prevent and overcome the worst of its impact. But as we begin to look forward, we have the opportunity to take some of the lessons learned from the pandemic, and in particular, the lessons that we are all in this together. We cannot act alone to achieve our sustainable development goals, because what impacts you also impacts me. We must work together in partnership towards shared prosperity. On that note, I would like to invite opening remarks from the United Nations President of the General Assembly.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to join all of you in commemorating United Nations Public Service Day, to recognize the work and dedication of public servants around the world. Today, we confront many challenging issues: the COVID-19 pandemic and its fallout, climate change, growing inequality, conflict, economic uncertainty, human rights violations, and the list continues. Consequently, our global norms and institutions have been shaken, especially in the last 2 years. It is those who work in public service who have helped us weather this storm. It is their hard work, innovation, and dedication to their communities that gives us confidence that despite the many ordeals we have gone through and despite the many challenges ahead, we can still succeed in creating a better future. Of course, this will not be easy. The COVID-19 pandemic has compounded many pre-existing development challenges, particularly for vulnerable countries such as LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS. It has shifted their economic trajectories and reversed many of their hard-won gains. Overcoming these challenges requires us to leverage partnerships, build upon the values of multilateralism, and strengthen our institutions. This demands not only cooperation through diplomatic channels, but also investment in our public institutions and in our public servants. We must strengthen their capacity and facilitate their ability to contribute. Towards that end, it is also important to encourage our youth to pursue careers in public service. We must build up their skills and encourage them to harness their ingenuity and energy to help us realize the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Those sentiments are precisely why my office launched a Fellowship of Hope program to empower young diplomats from underrepresented countries by giving them direct experience working within the United Nations multilateral setting. This fellowship aligns with my presidency's dual commitment to youth and to geographical diversity and inclusivity. It is my sincere hope that they will use the insights and knowledge they gain through this fellowship to benefit their communities. In that same spirit, it is also vital that as we bolster our efforts to supporting increasing geographical diversity within the United Nations Secretariat. The number of underrepresented countries at the Secretariat currently stands at 61. Friends, across the world, it is public servants who have directly catered to the needs of their vulnerable communities. It is they who have tended to disasters on a range of fronts, whether it be health challenges, climate and environment-related disasters, or alleviating the burdens of poverty. We have a responsibility to not only recognize them, but to support them and to partner with them in the spirit of Goal 17 of the 2030 Agenda on building partnerships to help achieve our sustainable goals. I close by wishing all of you a very happy United Nations Public Service Day, and by urging the global community to do all that we can to support their crucial work. I thank you.
Thank you, PJ, for your inspiring remarks and for emphasizing the importance of Goal 17 on partnerships. I would now like to invite remarks from the United Nations President of ECOSOC.
I am greatly honored to address you on United Nations Public Service Day, which is held under the theme Building Back Better from COVID-19, Enhancing Innovative Partnerships to Meet the Sustainable Development Goals. This is an important day in the United Nations calendar, and I wish to celebrate with you the dedication and commitment of public servants everywhere in advancing sustainable development. Over the past 2 years, we have witnessed public servants working in the most challenging of circumstances to ensure the continuation of vital public services to all, from healthcare and education to sanitation and transport. Despite these efforts, COVID-19 laid bare the immense challenges the world faces and has reversed decades of action towards our shared development objectives. Consequently, we have witnessed rising inequality both within and between countries, sharp increases in poverty, a slowing economy, geopolitical uncertainty, and the continuing challenges of effectively addressing climate change confronting us as we work towards our 2030 goals. In particular, the most vulnerable in our societies, including migrants, persons with disabilities, young people, and women, amongst others, have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic and its continuing ramifications. While COVID-19 ripped apart our lives, it also gave many of us a moment to reflect on the importance of solidarity in tackling our common challenges. The pandemic has reminded us that we are all in this together. We can only achieve sustainable prosperity when it is a shared prosperity. As we look to the future and plan for the forthcoming high-level political forum on sustainable development, the HLPF, the theme on building back better from COVID-19 while advancing the full implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is central to ensuring a shared prosperity. As such, this year's UN Public Service Day celebration speaks right to the heart of this vision, echoing our commitment to work together to enhance global solidarity towards the goals. The UN Public Service Day's theme also underlines the critical importance of partnerships in promoting inclusive development and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. Building back better from COVID-19 and building a better world requires public institutions, the private sector, civil society, academia, and global institutions to work together and forge innovative partnerships that will accelerate the realization of the SDGs. In addition, stronger multilateralism and international cooperation are needed to address our current and future challenges and to achieve prosperity for all. At the global level, we must abide by our international financing commitments, fix the international financial system, and we must enhance the sharing of resources, knowledge, and information. At the local and national levels too, we must enhance our partnerships and create participatory mechanisms that promote the sharing of ideas and collective ownership of our development efforts. As President of the United Nations Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, I will preside over the 2022 High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development, HLPF, to review the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In line with the UN Public Service Day theme, I am pleased that goal number 17 on partnerships for the goals is one of the goals being reviewed. Other goals to be reviewed are SDG 4 on quality education, 5 on gender equality, 14 on life below water or oceans, and 15 on life on land. During HLPF, member states will provide updates on progress made in SDGs under review. HLPF will provide us with a chance not only to review what we have done, but to forge new partnerships as we work to build back better on the road to 2030. As we celebrate UN Public Service Day, I would like to commend all public servants everywhere for their dedication and commitment. In closing, I would like to warmly congratulate all the 2022 United Nations Public Service Award winners. Your initiatives demonstrate the role of innovation and partnerships in enhancing service delivery and advancing sustainable development. I thank you for your kind attention.
I would like to thank the President of ECOSOC for his message and for highlighting just how important partnerships are as we work towards the SDGs. Now it is my distinct honor to invite our next speaker to the screen, Her Excellency Ms. Ohad Al-Rumi, Minister of State for Government, Development, and the Future of the United Arab Emirates. Excellency, thank you for joining us today. The floor is now yours.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from the United Arab Emirates. It's really a great pleasure to be here today, honoring the values and virtues of public service and recognizing more than 500 million individuals who make up the public sector globally. Selfless individuals who serve with pride and who are the lifeline of our communities, our nations, and our world. Our frontline workers, healthcare staff, teachers, social service employees, and countless others who worked so hard to ensure life goes on. Dear friends, in December 2021, the UAE hosted the United Nations Public Service Award, which I was privileged to be personally involved in. It was not just a special moment to honor the contribution of public servants. It was also an important opportunity to shine a spotlight on the magnitude of their impact during the global pandemic. Excellencies, distinguished guests, COVID-19 turned our world upside down in a blink of an eye. It has taught us that disruption can come from anywhere, at any time, and at exceptional speed, and that the world cannot afford not to be ready. We do not have the luxury of making the same mistakes. We have the responsibility to learn from each other. We cannot be reactive anymore. We must be proactive. We must be resilient. We must be future ready. Dear friends, for governments around the world, it is no longer business as usual. We must fundamentally consider social policies, education, health, security, safety, economic models, and government systems and legislation, as well as build new business models that support these changes. This can only be achieved if we work together. It is in strong partnerships that we can foster inclusive and sustainable recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not new to the United Arab Emirates, a nation that was born on the spirit of partnership and union. It is in strong partnerships that resilience thrives, And in this resilience, we will not just build back better, but we will build for the future. And the UAE is building for the future. In fact, we just finished hosting a 6-month World Expo, which focused on creating the future through the power of connection. A World Expo of unprecedented scale and impact, in which we partnered with more than 200 participating countries and organizations and welcomed 24 million visitors. It is also through this power of connection that we are reshaping civil service in the UAE and beyond to become more future ready. We are focused on reskilling and upskilling our public servants and empowering them with lifelong learning. In that spirit, we launched a government experience exchange program to share our knowledge and experiences beyond our borders. This knowledge sharing platform focused on government modernization has involved 18 countries to date in over 45 areas of cooperation, including a UAE Africa exchange program with UNDP. Dear friends, at the center of our global exchange efforts is our annual World Government Summit, where we are able to expand our circle of knowledge through partnerships. In 2022, we hosted our 8th iteration of the summit under the theme Shaping Future Governance to discuss such critical topics. Over the last 8 years, we have engaged with over 25,000 attendees through almost 1,000 sessions and workshops. And over 80 bilateral agreements were made. The summit is a platform that is true to our values as government, in which we firmly believe in the power of building global meaningful partnerships in order to be ready for the future. Ladies and gentlemen, what our global interchanges have taught us as a nation is that the current era is defined by the interplay of complex disruptions. The global challenges we face today cannot be tackled alone. They require new thinking and global collaboration. They require joint efforts from all stakeholders, including government, private sector, civil society, and the global community. As public service leaders, we have to strengthen the binding power we developed during our shared crisis. We must use our partnerships to rethink traditional models and build the capacity of all stakeholders to engage in new ways of working across sectors and across nations. In the UAE, we stand by this because we cannot build back if we don't stand together, let alone build better or build for the future. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude my remarks today, I cannot help but think of the incredible sacrifices that public servants make every day around the world and in all walks of life. This is why the UN Public Service Day is so close to my heart, as it provides an opportunity for the world to pause and recognize the critical role public servants play. So thank you again for joining us on this special occasion to acknowledge and honor them. And to the recipients of the 2022 UN Public Service Awards, who will be announced shortly, congratulations on this well-deserved victory. Your communities and your nations are grateful for your service. Thank you.
Excellency, thank you so much for such an inspirational address. I would now like to hand the floor to His Excellency, Mr. David Senge, Minister of Basic Education and Senior Secondary Education of Sierra Leone, for his opening remarks. Excellency, thank you for joining. The floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. My role is to speak just a little bit on the partnerships for development at the local and national level and how we might be able to leverage this to reach the SDG 4 in the wake of the COVID-19. I mean, I think it's really important to note that we are at a critical moment in the world, and we all don't need to be reminded of that. And in particular, as the Minister of Education for Sierra Leone and chair of the High-Level Steering Committee to UNESCO and the UN Secretary General's Transforming Education Summit Advisory Board, I see this very clearly. I'm in Paris right now, chairing the Global Education Monitoring Reports Advisory, and it is crystal clear that we have to turn to partnerships if we have to accelerate towards the SDGs in total, and certainly the SDG 4. And there are multiple layers for this. At the local level in Sierra Leone, one of the things that we're doing is to strengthen the partnerships with smaller consortiums like the NGOs and the civil society. And within the NGO and the civil society framework, we're able to actively implement programs in support of government and in support of us meeting our benchmark targets. Secondly, we've been able to go beyond these organizational frameworks and include young people. I think as problem solvers and policymakers, it is important that young people are not just in the room, but they are at the table and that they are being consulted, particularly when it comes to the delivery of services for them. And in Sierra Leone, we launched the Youth Advisory Group, which is a commitment that we made as well at the COP26 summit. And this is to move this forward. We're going to try to put this into law such that we couldn't discuss issues around education for young people without having young people at the table. At the donor and education development level, it is important that we think about frameworks as existing multi-donor trust funds that all work towards supporting government and institutions' capacity within countries. Now, as somebody who's also the chief education, the chief innovation officer for my country, I believe in the power of private sector, and I believe in the power of data and technology and innovation. Through global and local engagements, particularly within COVID and after COVID, with institutions like EdTech Hub, Grade 3, and the Directorate of Science, Technology, and Innovation in Sierra Leone, we've seen that if we build hybrid solutions that work for everyone, from paper as technology to the metaverse as technology, we're able to ensure that no one is left behind, and we can use these partnerships to really include and drive solutions for everybody. We are at the UN, and this means we can engage bilaterally, and I think it goes without saying that we do have a great relationship with the UAE, and it's not just we didn't plan this, but Minister Ahoud and UAE and myself and Sierra Leone have been engaging extensively on innovation and technology towards the SDG, and certainly on the digital public goods. And the digital public goods is another example. The digital public goods is another example where we have been able to demonstrate certainly that where multilateral organizations and countries and private sector come together, we'll be able to drive change. I want to end by saying where I started, that we are at the unique point and inflection moment in the world where without proper partnerships between these multilateral organizations, between research, academia, governments, the UN, it'll be very difficult for us to move towards the SDG 4. And as a chairperson of, as I mentioned, of GEM Report and of the High-Level Steering Committee and the Transforming Education Summit, I do think this is very evident, particularly in the education sector. Thank you.
Excellency, thank you so much for your address. Well, I think our opening session has really set the context for today's event and for our panel discussion coming up. However, before we get to that, we're delighted to move to the next segment of our program, and the one that many of you have been excitedly waiting for, including myself. And this is the announcement of the 2022 United Nations Public Service Awards. The United Nations Public Service Awards is an annual competition that recognizes excellence in public service, rewarding creative achievements and contribution of public service institutions that lead to a more effective and responsive public administration in countries worldwide. To announce this year's winners, I would like to invite Undersecretary General of DESA, Mr. Lou Jemin, to take the floor. Mr. Lou, the floor is now yours.
Thank you once again. It is a pleasure for moderating this event. As you mentioned, the United Nations Public Service Awards recognize the excellence in public service delivery worldwide. And each year, we are inspired by the innovations we receive, both large and small, from local to national level. More than this, we're inspired by the creativity and the tenacity of the public servants and their partners who bring these initiatives to life. For the 2022 UN Public Service Awards, we received more than 350 innovative submissions from 58 countries across all regions. We considered innovations across 4 categories. Number 1, innovation to deliver inclusive and equitable services. Number 2, enhancing the effectiveness of public institutions to reach the SDGs. Number 3, promoting gender responsible public services. And number 4, a special category on institutional resilience and innovative responses to the COVID-19 pandemic. This category was exceptionally introduced this year to highlight the immense efforts and good practices that public institutions have implemented to fight against the COVID-19 and contain the social and economic fallout from the pandemic. Across these 4 categories, 10 initiatives have been chosen to receive the 2022 UN Public Service Award. All the winning initiatives demonstrated excellence and innovation in delivering public services with a people-centric approach. They have committed themselves to providing more efficient public services, which are indispensable to achieving sustainable development. With this in mind, I'm delighted to announce the winners of the 2022 UN Public Service Awards. For category 1, fostering innovation to deliver inclusive and equitable services for all, the award goes to the Digital Economy Promotion Agency of Thailand for its initiative called Libong Community, Digital Transformation for Smart Environment. For category 2, on enhancing the effectiveness of public institutions to reach SDGs, 3 initiatives have been awarded. The awards go to, number 1, the Department of Science and Technology, Republic of the Philippines, Science for Change Program. Number 2, the state-owned enterprise ProzoSail, Ukraine for ProzoSail. Number 3, the City Hall of Recife of the Republic of Brazil for the Community Peace Center. For category 3, on promoting gender responsive public services to achieve the SDGs, 2 initiatives have been awarded. The awards go to, number 1, Capital Region Urban Transport of India, MOBAS Initiative. Number 2, the Commission for Standards, Equity and Health and Safety at Work, Quebec of Canada, for the implementation of the Pay Equity Act. For the special category on institutional resilience and innovative response to the COVID-19 pandemic, 4 initiatives have been awarded. The awards go to, number 1, the Saudi Data and AI Authority, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, for the Tawakana app. Number 2, Chief Sanitary Inspectorate, the Republic of Poland, for the system of records of the state sanitary inspection. Number 3, the National Authority for Government Innovation, Panama, for PANAVAC 19. Number 4, the Department of Rural and Community Development, Republic of Ireland, for the Social Inclusion and Community Activation Program. Ladies and gentlemen, while we could only award a few selected initiatives under this year's special category, I would also like to recognize the cases submitted from Austria, Bangladesh, Macau Special Administrative Region of China, Colombia, Republic of Korea, and Singapore. These shortlisted entries and this category contain valuable lessons and are available on the UNPSA Innovation Hub. The hub, which is accessible via the UNDESA website, is a depository of all the initiatives since 2015, searchable by SDG. Here, you can find more detailed information about all our winning initiatives, along with the more than 350 cases received for the UN Public Service Program this year. Well, it's unfortunate we could not hold award ceremony in person this year. We are excited about recognizing the winning institutions in person at our next UN Public Service Forum and award ceremony. I wish to extend my special congratulations to the 10 winning institutions for this year's award and wish you all a very happy UN Public Service Day. In closing, I want to thank my colleagues of DPIDG of UNDESA for organizing this year's UN Public Service Awards. And I also want to thank all experts who contributed to the evaluation and selection of all the awards we are not just announced. Thank you.
I too would like to congratulate all the 2022 UN Public Service Award winners. Your innovation showed that when we work together, change is possible at all levels. And on that note, we have a short video to play congratulating the 2022 UNPSA winners.
Apologies, more technical difficulties. Just bear with us 2 seconds.
Congratulations again to all the winners. And now on to our panel discussion. I have with me today a panel of distinguished experts to discuss the role of innovative partnership for development and how these can be leveraged and developed to build back from COVID-19 as we work towards the SDGs. I'm delighted to be joined by Honorable Ms. Rooney Malik Lowe, Mayor of Banjul, the Gambia, Mr. Philip McGrath, Head of Public Service Reform, Department of Public Expenditure and Reform Ireland, Mrs. Neven Manik, Advisor to the Prime Minister, Public Administration Reform and E-Government Serbia, Ms. Maziko Mutembu, AYC Constituency, Vice Chair, Partnership for Maternal and Child Health in Malawi. Honorable Ms. Rooney Malik Lowe, I am actually going to start with you. You are the first ever woman to be elected Mayor of Banjul in the Gambia and also hold the role of President of REFLA, the Network of Locally Elected Women of Africa. Honorable Mayor, let's begin with looking a little bit more at the role innovative partnerships can play at the local level. We all know that the COVID-19 pandemic, while it was global, also uniquely affected local people and communities at many levels, including community and family levels, and placing enormous pressure on the resources of local authorities. Can you talk a little bit more about the main lessons learned from this experience and what role partnership did and can play in making local communities more resilient to future shocks and crisis? You have the floor, Honorable.
Our winners. Allow me to congratulate our winners. We're all proud of them. And I also want to celebrate our heroes. That is to say, the doctors, nurses, lawyers, police, firefighters. They are making life very easy for us. And therefore, we want to celebrate them. And also to congratulate all public service officials, especially women public service officials, because as I said, they are doing double shift, that is at work and at home. I think it's very, very important to recognize them. So congratulations to all women. Innovative partnership, to start with, is crucial in improving the conditions of living of the people. This was evident during the COVID-19 pandemic. During the COVID-19, we had several partners who came to our aid. Example, UN agencies, philanthropists, private businesses, etc. Aid was also received mostly from our national governments to the local government during, knowing very well the importance of local government. And I keep saying this every time, that the best example or the best thing we have learned out of the COVID-19 is to understand the importance of local government. This is something that we have really, really learned from the COVID-19. Some of the main lessons learned, again, from this, there are more than one tier of government in many countries of Africa. And decentralization has been adopted as a reform policy to take governance closer to the people and improve their conditions of living. Again, it is trying to emphasize the importance of local government. What we are not doing right in this dispensation is working in close collaboration. The national government thinks they have decentralized and then all problems are solved. I said, no. We need to work in close collaboration to ensure multi-level governance is effective to meet up with the challenges of building back better from the COVID-19. In June, for example, we had partners who supported us with personal physical equipment, hand sanitizers, buckets, as well as soap to enable the population to respect the COVID-19 protocols in place. So basically what I'm trying to say here is the lessons learned is to say that nobody can do it alone. No one can do it alone. And local government is vital, is important because we are close to the people. So this is one lesson that COVID-19 has brought to our doorsteps. This is to say that we have to collaborate. Collaboration is very, very key, is very, very important. Without collaboration, we cannot do it because nobody is an island. No man is an island. So this is why I always put emphasis to say that there are negative effects of COVID-19, but let us also look at in another perspective. That is to say that it has also come with a positive effects. That is to wake our governments up, to say that local governments are here, they are nearer to the people, and they need to be given attention. And in Banjul, for example, when the COVID-19 came, this was when our national government knew the importance of local government, but since we are closer to the people, everybody was running to us. So Elizabeth, this is what I want to just add on this important meeting today.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mayor, for your intervention. And also, this reminds me so much of our African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think it's really important to see that you have decided to go together, which is really key for partnerships. I would now like to turn my attention to Mr. Philip McGrath, who is the head of Public Service Reform, Department of Public Expenditure and Reform in Ireland, which has a key responsibility, among which implementing the government's public service innovation strategy called Making Innovation Real and coordinating Ireland's Open Government Partnership National Action Plan. That's a bit of a mouthful. Mr. McGrath, can you tell us a little bit more about how the government is working to make innovation real? And in particular, what role partnership play in this at both the international and the local level?
Yes, of course.
Also, I'm curious before you jump on, I mean, were there any examples of partnership during the pandemic that the government will now continue for broader public service development? So over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Elizabeth, and the distinguished guests and speakers. The Irish government actually published our public service innovation strategy in the middle of the pandemic. It was in November 2020. And this was the result of a period of collaboration that we had with many stakeholders and partners to bring this strategy to a point where we could, I suppose, where we could put it out to our people and put it out to our public service bodies. We commenced the whole of government approach to public service innovation by way of a partnership with other countries, actually. Crucially, we were involved with the OECD's Observatory on Public Sector Innovation. And this involved working with other countries to set out some very basic principles about what governments need to do in order to foster innovation in public services. And we adopted a declaration along with about 40 other countries. But I mean, a declaration can only go so far. So we sought to socialize those principles through our own public service by creating a national public service innovation statement and asking our public service bodies to sign up to those. And really what we wanted to do was make those principles into a reality. So what we did was we commenced a journey on translating those idealistic principles into something a little bit more tangible. So we created a public service innovation strategy, and to do that we had to consult widely. As part of our evidence building exercise, we worked with stakeholders across government and outside of government to understand, what is it that they need us to actively do to drive innovation in public services. And this resulted in a sort of a framework of 4 key priority areas. And these were all underpinned by 8 specific goals and actions. And we actually decided to test our framework with, we went out to 4 very, very different public service bodies to see if those priorities and goals that we were setting were appropriate and could, be actioned in those organizations. And what really we found was that this iterative process was really important in helping us to ascertain if this strategy was appropriate to our users, which were public service bodies. And then really having regard to the feedback loops, we could finalize our own strategy and our own action plan and publish it sort of safe in the knowledge that we'd engaged with sufficient partners across, and outside government. And we could make sure that we were addressing their needs. And look, I suppose a really key element in this process for us was putting in place supports for our public service bodies, so to enable them to innovate. And that included, a guide on how to drive innovation within a public service organization. It meant learning and development interventions, upskilling. It meant establishing a network. So if you do something innovative in your organization, another organization can, as we say, adapt or adopt it. We also put in place a fund to help organizations to resource innovative projects that maybe their own organizations simply didn't have the money to do. But what was really, I suppose, and getting back to what you asked there in terms of partnerships, I mean, I think never before in the history of public service provision in Ireland have I seen such a willingness by all sections of society, and the mayor said this, right, this is about everyone, putting their hands on the tiller, everyone trying to help. And I mean, at certain points through the pandemic, we were actually overwhelmed in government with the offers of help that came from other sections of society. But we worked with partners from multinationals who helped us develop a COVID tracker app or helped us put in place our vaccination infrastructure. We worked with charitable bodies or non-government institutions who helped us to protect our vulnerable citizens by making sure they had access to really basic necessities like the delivery of food or medicines. And we had international partnerships and assistance. And that was, for things like tracking and modeling the virus and finding ways to contain it. And then, of course, our community groups and local governments, they worked really closely together, whether it was to transport people to vital medical appointments or, to provide outdoor activities when we could to prevent isolation and loneliness amongst our citizens. And so they're just some of the examples. And I think what's really important now is, and we have a project ongoing in the Irish government now, to see what we can take from that COVID pandemic, what was really good, and then to translate it into how we do services into the future. And I really hope that work will materialize very quickly and that we'll be able to share with others around the world.
Thank you so much, Mr. McGrath, for your intervention and for sharing Ireland's story. I would now like to turn to Ms. Nevena Manik, advisor to the Prime Minister, Public Administration Reform and E-Government Serbia. Ms. Manik has extensive experience working with both the private and public sectors in Serbia, but as well as at the EU level. Ms. Manik, increasingly, public service and public administration are going digital, right? Many of our public service can be accessed via our laptops and our phones, or even this Zoom call that we're having here today. And throughout the pandemic, we really began to see an increasingly reliant on e-government solutions. Partnership with the private sector, in particular tech companies, became really critical in helping come up with more innovative public service delivery solutions. Can you just talk a little bit about your experience of some of these partnerships and how they can be leveraged by public administrations? You have the floor.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, everyone, for the great presentations. It is such a pleasure to be here today. And I would also like to congratulate the winners. And it is really a pleasure to take the day today to honor public servants and be part of this celebration. As you said, Elizabeth, I have experience working in the EU level prior to working at the Prime Minister's office. And I'm actually right now in Brussels for the Emerging Europe event, we are celebrating another initiative of Serbia, and actually tomorrow the award will be announced. So we hope for the very best. That is why we are here. And this initiative that we are celebrating today in Brussels is very connected to the partnerships between the public and the private sector. It is called My First Salary, and that is something that was done during the pandemic in Serbia as a solution to two problems. First of all, COVID had a great impact to employability, and a lot of people had trouble finding work, difficult networking, and the social distancing, of course, took its toll. But also we realized that many young people don't have experience necessary even for the entry-level jobs. So My First Salary is actually a scheme that connects young people and the private companies in Serbia for what it is My First Salary. And many people afterwards ended up in that company for a full work contract. So we are actually already started with the second round. So this has been really a tremendously successful project that the fact that it has been shortlisted for the Emerging Europe Awards in the area of social inclusion has also been a great sign that we are doing a good thing. I'm also very grateful for UN for always emphasizing the importance of partnership. There's without a doubt that is very, very important in all spheres, but especially innovation. In my experience, innovation in public service is tremendously important. And we always have to think about ways how it can be accelerated. One thing that we did in Serbia is we introduced Partnership for Innovation, which is a mechanism that has been introduced in the public procurement law that enables innovative companies to co-create with the public service. So rather than starting from the solution and offering it through public procurement, we wanted to have for the companies to have the option of starting from the problem and then co-creating the solution with the public servant. However, when we further analyze the usage of this mechanism, we realize that there is a great gap between the public service and the innovative companies. And then we realized that it is really, really important for us to bridge that gap and to create long-lasting partnerships that will result in innovation in all spheres. And that is why we started with this initiative that we are now still drafting, but we really want Serbia to become one of the leading hubs of GovTech. And we really want to become a regional leader in GovTech. And the way how we want to do it is exactly, we want to nurture the partnerships between the private sector, innovative SMEs, startups, and public servants on the other side. The way how we will do it is in two streams. The first one would be to have a GovTech incubator. So to really, in Serbia, we have a lot of initiatives that aim at fostering the startup ecosystem, but we feel that GovTech ecosystems, GovTech startups are a bit different and require special attention. So we really want to have a separate GovTech incubator for these startups. Also to have a bridge between the public sector, meaning to give them inspiration, what data is available maybe through open data that they can use, that they can improve their solution, or maybe their business model is more focused to the companies, but in fact, it makes more sense to be applied in governments, local self-governments and central governments. But at the other side, we really want to do what we would like to call procurement lab, meaning that we want civil servants to understand how to use Partnership for Innovation, how to understand which technologies can be procured for what. And this, by leveraging these partnerships between the private sector and public sector, we really think that this will create a lasting impact, because everything is about the ecosystem. We want an innovative ecosystem, and we also want a GovTech ecosystem. Because every stakeholder has their role in this ecosystem, the academia, the private sector, the startups, the finance community, and then of course the public sector, the government, and everyone needs to understand their role, but also they need to talk. So that is why we want to do a GovTech Hub. So all these initiatives that I spoke about, the incubator, the procurement lab, will actually be in a GovTech Hub, a physical space, because people need to meet. And now, luckily, when we are, I would say, past pandemic, I think now it's a bit safe to say that, although you can never be too sure, but definitely, you know, although this event is online, we have a lot of events happening live, and we really want to have a physical space where these people will meet and actually, you know, see that there's so many commonalities between them. But another thing when it comes to the GovTech community is, of course, capacity building. So what we have already invested in is really building capacities of civil servants to understand new technologies. So what we did is we piloted a data officer training. So civil servants go through very intensive data science training, and they also can practice on a platform that we established for them as well. So we really want them to understand data science and how it can be used. At the same time, one project that we have been extremely proud of is a training. It's a self-paced online training available for all civil servants in Serbia and for the entire private sector. So when we created it, we wanted it to be available for all companies and all civil servants, all free of charge. The companies are doing it through the Chamber of Commerce, and the civil servants through the National Academy for Public Administration. This training is called New Technologies, Introduction to Fourth Industrial Revolution, and it covers 7 modules. So AI.
Ms. Manek, can I just stop you for a second? Because I want to come back to you. I want to come back and really take another deep dive. But before we do that, I also want to invite our next speaker. But first of all, we are rooting for you in Brussels, and it's really inspiring for us to hear what you're doing in terms of creating ecosystems, but also in particular, the investment in youth, which is really, really critical. But let me just turn my focus now to Ms. Maziko Mutemvu, Adolescents and Youth Constituency, Vice Chair of the Partnership for Maternal and Child Health Malawi, which is hosted by the World Health Organization. The PMNCH is the world's largest alliance for women's, children's, and adolescents' health and well-being. So Ms. Mutemvu, as the Vice Chair of the Adolescent and Youth Constituency, could you talk a little bit more about the work and the value of the Global Partnership? In particular, what role has young people played in this partnership, and what has been the impact that you have seen?
All right, thank you very much for your question. So obviously the power of young people is probably the most untapped, yet critical resource that we have at our disposal today. Thousands of us are already driving transformative change, and many more are poised to do so, but often lack the opportunity and the means. Tapping in this powerhouse of human potential can transform the global health landscape and help us achieve our sustainable development goals faster and better. Meaningful adolescent youth engagement is the cornerstone of PMNCH's engagement with young people. The Adolescent and Youth Constituency is composed of about 122 ambitious and inclusive youth-led organizations working at country, regional, and global levels. We ensure that young people continue to be a key driver of change and are an important contributor to the PMNCH work plan as a whole. For instance, recognizing the multitude of challenges faced by young people for a more concerted and collaborative approach to adolescents' well-being, an unprecedented coalition of governments, United Nations agencies, non-governmental organizations, and academic institutions working closely with adolescents and young people committed to a call to action for adolescents. I am proud to actually say that I was one of the young people who co-developed this call to action. And this call was made in awareness to the response of the lack of attention to the need for coordinating diverse sectors to address the multidimensional nature of adolescent well-being. All these challenges have been exacerbated by COVID-19. The call to action for adolescents lays out 3 key asks. First, to empower and engage adolescents and youth. Second, to go beyond the health sector. Third, to launch a powerful and multi-sectoral response, and to strengthen political commitment and funding through a global forum for adolescents. Staying true to the asks, young people from the AYC are represented at global events such as this one, empowered through capacity building, academic writing, and leadership opportunities with the PMNCH structures. So for instance, all the governance structures at PMNCH now have a leader who is under 30 co-chairing those structures, and youth-led organizations in different countries have received funds, their own capacity and their peers' capacities to advocate for adolescent well-being. And we are now gearing up to build a civic movement in the lead up to the Global Forum for Adolescents, which will take place in October 2023. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your intervention. And again, it was just such a nice dovetail from the previous speaker talking about the importance of youth in this conversation. I want to go back to Honorable Mayor, if you're still with us. You are the president of RAFELA, the network of locally elected women in Africa, and you work directly with women in public administration from across the region. We're wondering if you could just share with us the values of such networks and partnership, particularly when it comes to empowering women in government. Over to you, Honorable.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I think first and foremost, it's important to explain the structure of RAFELA and the institution itself. It's a
Honorable
network
Mayor,
that brings together all leaders, especially elected. No, sorry, I'm on mute. Hello, can you hear me, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I can hear you, and we acknowledge that you're on the go, so please do carry on.
Yeah, okay. Now I said, let me first and foremost explain the institution itself, RAFELA, which is a network that brings together all women leaders, especially elected representatives of regional authorities in Africa. It was set up in 2011 in the Kingdom of Morocco and represents Africa on UCLG Standing Committee on Gender Equality. So I'm just saying this for you to understand that RAFELA is there to empower women, and not only locally elected women, but African women in general. For now, it has 30 national chapters where it promotes the gender of the emancipation of women and equality between women and men within African local authorities. And for this purpose, has supported the development of the local authorities charter for gender equality in Africa. As you well know, the constitution of all African countries make mention of gender equality right from its preamble. Many other policies as well as political party campaign promises talk about gender equality. The Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, would see fully empowered women with equal access and opportunity in all spheres of life. The Sustainable Development Goals, especially Goal 5, which is very near to my heart, talks of achieving gender equality and empower all women and girls. Given the fact that we are far from achieving this, RAFELA, through its Standing Committee on Gender Equality of UCLG Africa, has adopted a charter called Local and Regional Governments Charter for Gender Equality in Africa. Elizabeth, the implementation of the charter is linked to a 3-year action plan, which consists of activities such as awareness raising, advocacy, capacity building of members, and sharing of good practices to assist its application. The charter recognizes that women and men have equal value as well as equal ability and freedom to hold public office and to participate in the governance of their community at all levels of decision making. The local and regional governments acceding to this charter, undertake to promote the equal representation of women and men in the deliberative and executive bodies of local and regional governments and in all local platforms, and comply with the international and national measures and policies aimed at improving women's representation in decision-making circles. I'm bringing this, Elizabeth, so that you can understand structure that and how is it. It is also important to understand that Rafaela does not only work for local elected women of Africa, as I said before, it is a network for local elected women, but covers activities to cover all women, youth, and children of Africa. This implies that Rafaela is directly responsible to seek solutions to challenges that African women, youths, and children face as mothers of Africa. This explains the value of the network. Given the importance of the network, Rafaela is supported by some partners who believe in the important work we are doing, especially when it comes to our campaigns. And those campaigns normally are the African Streets Without Children. We have economic empowerment of women, zero tolerance of violence against women, political empowerment of women, just to name a few. I think with the interest of time, I will just stop here, but also to acknowledge our partners. That is the Kingdom of Morocco, with an annual grant to support Rafaela activities. We have UCLG, the United Cities and Local Government, World Organization, and Council of European Municipalities and Regional, especially in the drafting and publication of the Charter. It is also important to recognize the European Union, who provided financial support to the publication of the Charter through the content, does not engage the EU in any way. Civil society organizations also are our partners, etc. And indeed, the United Nations. So Elizabeth, I think I will just stop here and want to thank you once again for inviting me to this important meeting, and congratulations to all winners and congratulations to our heroes. They make us proud and are still making us proud. That is the civil servants. Thank you so much, especially women who are, as I said, doing double shift, that is working at home and working in the offices. And shout out to the civil servants in the Gambia and to Africa by extension. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mayor. Indeed, the importance of gender equality cannot be overemphasized. None of the goals are achievable if women are not at the table. And so we thank you for fighting the good fight and being on the ground and doing the hard work. I want to now turn to Mr. Philip McGrath. As we have heard throughout today's event, we know that the pandemic has had a major impact on people's livelihoods, with poverty, the cost of living, and inequality rising pretty much everywhere. We also know that the SDGs are about leaving nobody behind. And so I'm curious, what innovative approaches that you have seen that we can implement to addressing these issues, in particular to make sure that public administrations take this into account to include the most vulnerable in their public service delivery? Over to you, Mr. McGrath.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I suppose a key element here is about accessibility. How do we make our services as accessible as possible for our citizens? And to do that, I genuinely believe, and much like our Serbian speaker, that digitalization and the infrastructure to support digitalization will be a hugely influencing factor for ensuring equity for citizens across the board. I mean, if you think about the ubiquity of technologies around our globe, and having access to a handheld device and having access to the infrastructure that provides connectivity to the internet can revolutionize people's ability to access services. And that for me is a game changer in how we can include people in public services. But I think it's really important to be conscious of privilege here too. Not everyone is or can be a digital native. Not everyone has the same level of literacy as others. And not everyone is lucky enough to have access to a handheld device. And so that's why it's really important for governments to step in and bridge those gaps as much as possible. It's up to government to make things easier for our citizens by putting in place mechanisms. And I think of electronic IDs and safe and secure data sharing arrangements and connectivity, whether that's through available broadband or enhanced 4G or 5G in the future. And I think a really good way of championing accessibility to all is through assisted digital mechanisms. So that way you can use existing infrastructures, whether it be government offices or citizen information bureaus, to allow users that don't have the requisite capability to access services. So that can be, that can even be made mobile. There's some countries that have vans that go around to harder to reach villages and towns to give people convenience in accessing services. But I think more importantly than any of that, enabling people to become upskilled in this area is really important. So for example, in Ireland, we fund a number of community groups to help enhance digital inclusion to particular social groups that maybe experience high levels of exclusion. And these programs seek to encourage people to access services online because let's face it, it's easier, it's quicker, it's cheaper. It's also led to the added benefit of helping people to help themselves into the future and to become more confident in how they engage with public services. So look, I'll finish by saying that one area that we're focusing heavily on in Ireland is on service design and providing like what we think will be transformative for vulnerable user groups. Because what we're going to do is we're going to look at the best ways possible to bring those people into the conversation and to make certain that we get the views of all users, but really, really, especially those who are vulnerable or are too often forgotten about. And they're the people who most genuinely need convenient and accessible services. So there's more to do, definitely, but I think we can learn a lot from each other around the world, and we have learned from our international peers. Some fantastic countries around the world who've done a lot in this space and have done it really, really well, but really, really cheaply. So yeah. Thanks, Eliz.
No, thank you, Mr. McGrath. I'm also really happy to hear you talk about community-driven development, because often when we talk about partnerships, we often forget that an important stakeholder in whatever intervention we are trying to come up with has to be the communities themselves. You know, what's done for us without us is not for us. And so this is really, really encouraging, and I'm sure would love to learn more, you know, what comes out of these community engagements initiatives. Now, I want to turn back to you, Ms. Monique. We're back in Brussels with you. You were talking a lot about some of the great work that you've done, but also throughout this conversation, we've heard about the importance of cross-border collaboration. Do you have any examples that you can share on this kind of partnership? And again, what are the benefits? But also, let's take a quick look at some of the challenges to doing this as well.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. Yes, absolutely. As I said previously, luckily, the pandemic is behind us and we don't have to, we don't have these obstacles of communication and connection. I would like one example that is very recent, is earlier this month, UNDESA, together with the Astana Civil Service Hub, organized a UN Joint Capacity Development Workshop in the very similar theme of today's, and that is the innovation in e-government to build a resilient public administration. It was at the NISPA-C conference in Romania, and I had the great pleasure of participating. And it was really fantastic, the recommendation that we got there, and just the ability to be together and with the peers. I really enjoyed this panel as well, and hearing what is happening in Gambia and in Ireland. It's really fantastic to really, understand and also, kind of to be inspired to see what can be introduced here. Now, I know that, and everyone can agree that policy transfer, just, taking other people's practices and importing, it has many challenges. And to be successful, digital transformation needs to be conceptualized and analyzed and adapted to the particular needs and environment of each country. However, that does not mean that by establishing partnerships with different countries, that can only be beneficial. And it's really about not just exchanging practices, but co-creation. And that is something that we are doing. And I'm so honored to be speaking after Minister Al-Rumi, because in May, so just last month, Prime Minister of Serbia, Ana Brnabić, signed the MOU for the Government Experience Exchange Program with the UAE, with His Excellency Mohammed Al-Gergawi. He's the Minister of Cabinet Affairs. So just last month, we are one of the countries that UAE has established this cooperation with. And what we really understood from the very beginning is we are the same team. So we are, as I said, we work very much on new technologies, on emerging technologies, on artificial intelligence, and fostering the digital economy in Serbia. And we really, have this great mechanism of cooperation, meaning that we have designated teams that work together, that exchange knowledge, that inspire each other, that have regular communication already. So it's really, the UAE teams have already visited Serbia, and Serbia visited there. So it's really, we are so much on the same page of importance of innovation that we really expect some great results. And just to conclude, because I know that we are running out of time, but I just wanted to say, and I think this really summarized the entire event today, and we really live in a very unprecedented times, very fast changing world. And I think that we don't have the luxury of time and resources to learn only from our own mistakes. We need to establish partnerships on all levels and to understand what can be done, what someone else tried, what could be improved. We really, these partnerships will really accelerate all the progress that we are doing everywhere in the world. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Also, Ms. Monique, given the limited resources, I think the last thing that we want is to be wasting resources on things that we know haven't worked many, many times before. So again, the importance of partnership here is critical. I want now to turn to our last speaker, Ms. Maziko Mutembu. We talk a lot about youth participation, right? And we know that building back together has to also have youth at the center of these partnerships. But we know time and time again that it can sometimes feel like tokenism, that youth are being engaged, but they're not fully engaged. You yourself are a young person, and I was curious if you could share with us what you think are some of the meaningful ways that we can engage youth in supporting the work that needs to get done.
All right, thank you so much for your question, Elizabeth, and also just thank you to all the speakers that have shared their remarks. I think my contributions will cement the remarks that have been made recently. So I think to start off, the Global Consensus Statement on Meaningful Adolescent and Youth Engagement, MAYE, has been developed by young people and agreed to by over 200 organizations, which shows that the principles there can be recognized as key tenets of building partnerships with young people and involving them meaningfully. There is a saying that I heard you say, Elizabeth, that nothing for us without us. Yeah. The global response to COVID-19 is exacerbating inequity, and fewer than 2 in 10 COVID-19 related interventions considered gender in an explicit way, despite the predominance of women in the health workforce. The effects of COVID-19 disproportionately affect women and girls, yet the principle of leaving no one behind is at risk of being left behind in itself. Young people, especially women and girls who bear the brunt of a shadow pandemic, need to be meaningfully engaged and placed at the center of agendas committed to promote and protect women, children, and adolescents' health. Young people should be treated as equally sharing partners and not just beneficiaries. Young people are not a homogeneous group. As we partner with them, these young people, institutions and duty bearers need to understand and acknowledge their complexities and unique needs. Through the Future Life Now program, and UALE had reached in hard to reach areas who have access to the internet, who have no access to the internet, and through traditional means like radios and radio listening clubs to debunk myths and to share correct information on vaccines. As we think of innovations and foster innovations, and as we build forward and back COVID-19, we must not leave grassroots behind, and we must not leave the most vulnerable behind. Our interventions must be inclusive. In the SADC region and Malawi, we have witnessed a number of multi-sector partnerships with young people through, for example, the CSTO policy framework and the Future Life Now program, where youth agency has been promoted in member states and approaches are tailored to the needs of young people. Interventions supporting young people's partnerships must be funded. Capacity building must be prioritized and young people must be compensated for their time, for their effort, for their engagement, and for their expertise. To wrap up, I wanted to say that COVID-19 has intensified these existing gaps in the health and social systems and how they're experienced particularly by the vulnerable, including women, children, and adolescents. Not surprisingly, many low and middle income countries where the needs are the greatest and health systems the most fragile have experienced the most severe effects. Institutions and duty bearers must shift their focus from glamorizing, inviting young people to the table and empowering young people with skills and finances to build their own table and to use their own voices to speak more, to participate more, to ask more for what is rightly theirs. And that is why I believe the Global Forum is an opportunity where young people can influence the agenda, and be part of a global movement which will shine light on gaps which exist and ensure young people are the force of change. I would like to call upon partners and leaders to support the call to action for adolescents, which highlights the need for countries to adopt policies and programs prioritizing the investment in adolescents, and calls for a global forum for adolescents in 2023 to garner political and financial commitments. Following the leadership of member states that have already endorsed the call to action, this is an opportunity for young governments, for your government, to show global leadership for adolescent well-being and contribute to the Global Forum. But I think the most important thing that we can get from this is that young people are not just beneficiaries. We must not use them as tokens. We need to create tables for them, empower them with skills to create their own tables and to use their own voices and not speak on their behalf. Because if it's not for us, then it must be against us. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And I think for this really critical reminder that young people are the leaders of today and tomorrow, and that our role is to simply remove the obstacles to allow other young people such as yourself and others to lead. I think this has been such a wonderful conversation. As they say, all good things come to an end. We have run out of time. I would like to thank all the panelists and the participants for joining me today, and for you at home for watching. I would also like to wish you a very happy United Nations Public Service Day, and to congratulate once again all our winners of the UN Public Service Awards 2022. Thank you and goodbye.